Welcome to the PleinAir podcast from PleinAir magazine. I'm your host, Eric Rhodes, publisher and founder of PleinAir magazine, and this is episode number 9. This week, I'm interviewing artist and also Facebook superstar Jane Hunt. In the PleinAir podcast, we dive into the world of outdoor painting called plein air painting. For those of you who don't know, plein air is a French term that essentially means outdoors or open air. The French pronounce it plein air. Others will pronounce it plein air. There's not a right or wrong, no matter what you call it. It's a huge movement of artists around the world who are going outdoors to paint. We like to call it the new golf. And this show is all about the movement, the painters, the collectors, the galleries, and the art. And this week's podcast is brought to you by the PleinAir Salon Art Competition from PleinAir magazine. We have $21,000 in cash prizes, including a $15,000 grand prize and the cover, yes, the cover of PleinAir magazine. Imagine you're painting on the cover of the largest selling art magazine in America on the newsstands. This is pretty cool, and it could be you. Get your entry in. Everybody who's ever won thought they didn't have a chance because they thought they were up against the big players. But you know what? You still have a chance. Get your entry in. It has to be in by March 15th. It's your last chance to enter before we award the grand prize, which will be awarded at the convention. Enter your 5 best paintings for the year at pleinairsalon.com. Now, it's my desire to see more people fall in love with plein air painting because it's so much fun and it's so cool and it's so relaxing. You can help by sharing this podcast. Maybe they'll get the same disease that we have, which is plein air painting, of course. Share it with your friends on social media or email, and I hope you'll subscribe so that it comes to you every single week. Also, go on to iTunes and leave your comments. 5 stars are preferred, of course, but tell us what you think, really. That's okay. And if you have any feedback or interview requests, email me, Eric, at pleinairmagazine.com, spelled Plein, Plein, air, A-I-R, Eric at pleinairmagazine.com. Well, before we get rolling, I have some new statistics about the podcast I thought you might be interested in hearing. We are so lucky to have you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So far, we're up to 12,500 listeners in just 9 weeks. Pretty cool. The majority are in the United States, but Canada is number 2 with listening at about 20%. And then Australia is number 3 with about 5% of all of our listening. Plus, we have quite a few listens in South Africa, Brazil, Mexico, Italy, Germany, Spain, Chile, Greece, Taiwan, France, Serbia, Egypt, the Netherlands, Israel, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Belgium, Ireland, Switzerland, Turkey, Bermuda, Puerto Rico, Argentina, Norway, Korea, New Zealand, Russia, and yes, 19 more countries than that. So a welcome to our friends all around the world. Speaking of friends around the world, this podcast is brought to you by the Plein Air Convention, the world's largest gathering of plein air artists, and we do have artists coming in from countries all over the world. Every year, there's lots and lots of countries, and we invite you to come no matter where you live. You'll feel very comfortable and at home, whether you're from America or you're from anywhere in the world. We make you feel welcome. We have an orientation so that you meet new friends and have people to go to dinner and lunch with if you don't know anybody. We paint every single day, but we also have indoor instruction every single day. As a matter of fact, we have a huge faculty, and I'm going to tell you more about that faculty later today. You can save $200 before the next price increase, which is the 24th of March, and we're near sellout. There's only 200 seats left. That may seem like a lot, but this is our big time when people start registering heavily. So price increase goes up March 24th. You can save $200. Go to pleinairconvention.com. Today's interview is brought to you by easelbrushclip.com. Today we're interviewing artist Jane Hunt. Jane has exploded. Now that sounds messy. Now Jane has exploded on the scene recently. She's getting involved in all the major shows. Her work is selling like crazy, and she is a hot commodity. And she's also an expert at Facebook and Instagram, which might help drive all of that. I've asked her to come on and talk about art, her painting, her very interesting story on life and the challenges that she's faced as a mom, as a plein air painter, and also how she got up to 120,000 Facebook followers. Let's get right into it. Hi, Jane.
Hi, Eric.
Hey, I'm so glad you're on with us today. Thanks for agreeing to do this.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You're quite the phenomenon. You have, it seems, come out of nowhere. An overnight success, if you will. And I'm sure that's not exactly true, and it never is true. But we're hearing more about you and your paintings in the last couple of years than we've heard in a long time. So tell me how that all began. Why don't we start out with your story in art? How did you begin painting?
Well, probably like a lot of the artists you talk to, I've been sort of doing it my whole life. I was always drawing and getting in trouble at school for doodling and that kind of thing. But I've just always been interested in art. I was always surrounded by it. Grew up going to museums all over the place, so it's just always been my focus, I guess.
Did you have a particular mentor or someone that inspired you at a young age?
Well, my parents were huge art lovers, and I grew up in England, so I grew up going to a lot of the art museums there. The Tate and the National Gallery and places like that were close to my house, so that was good, but mostly the Impressionists, the sort of Monet and a lot of those guys. That's what I grew up being interested in.
Now, plein air painting, from my understanding in the UK, has been popular for a long time and oftentimes referred to as Sunday painters. A lot of people, I'm told, were doing it as hobbies. Did you encounter plein air painting at all as a child?
A little bit here and there, not a ton. I mean, because we went to, Marmottan and Giverny and places like that, it was obviously on my radar, but I moved to the States when I was a teenager, so I hadn't really been involved in that yet.
And what prompted the move? Curious.
Oh, my dad was an engineer, so we actually moved back and forth 3 times, which is fairly disorienting, actually, as a child. But anyway, we ended up staying here for good once I was 15.
All right. And so when did the painting career start to blossom?
Well, I went to art school, and
Where?
Cleveland Institute of Art.
All right.
Which, despite all the horror stories I hear, ours was actually pretty good. We had a 2-year foundation course, so they really hammered in the basics for us. We were right across the street from the Cleveland Museum of Art, so we could go over and sketch the masters and all that kind of stuff. So it was pretty good, but I became an illustration major because I didn't really understand that you could make it as a fine artist, so I went into the commercial side of things.
So you graduated from the school and you immediately became an illustrator?
I did. And I didn't really love trying to get someone else's vision down on paper. And after a few years of that, of kind of struggling with that and feeling like my work was too tight and too realistic and that kind of thing, I switched over to doing these really huge scale textural pieces, landscapes and figures and that kind of thing. Uh-huh. And I did that for almost a decade.
And you were selling your paintings, and were you successful selling them?
I was. I was in a lot of galleries, and that was the time, the galleries would call you once a week and say, hey, we need 3 more pieces. So it's kind of cranking pieces out, but it's very different now, obviously. It's kind of a first world problem now looking back, but it was pretty good.
Yeah, it sounds like it was pretty good. And then you made the transition to plein air painting. When did that occur?
Well, kind of the short version is I would have probably gone on with what I was doing for a long time, but in the meantime I had gotten married and had my first child, and then in 2004 we decided to adopt a child, and that's sort of when everything hit the fan as far as my personal life went. And my child, the child we adopted, has severe disabilities, and we didn't know, so I pretty much stopped painting cold turkey, just trying to cope with that.
Now, that must have been very difficult to cope with. And tell us a little bit about that story, if you don't mind. I know it's very personal.
Yeah, I don't mind. We adopted her from China, and we got to China, and we knew something immediately was not right. We were pretty naive and kind of idealistic, so the babies were all in pretty bad shape, but we got home and we were told that she had had a stroke, that she had brain damage, that she had cerebral palsy, and it went on, and eventually she was diagnosed with 27 different medical conditions. So, it was a lot to deal with. And painting was kind of the last thing on my mind. It seemed almost frivolous at that point to even think about it. So I was just trying to survive at that point.
And how long ago was that?
That was 11 years ago.
So your daughter is now, your second daughter is 11 or 12?
She's 12, yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. So go ahead. Give us a progress report.
Well, it's really interesting because I will never forget this. The year we brought her back, 2 days before Christmas, we were at the hospital, and they said to us, look, this kid is never going to speak, she's never going to walk, she's never going to crawl, so you guys need to manage your expectations. And then I went home, we had a crowd of people in for Christmas, and I had to go cook Christmas dinner and pretend that nothing had happened because I didn't want to ruin Christmas. So, that was what we thought for a long time. And she doesn't do anything in a typical way, but, she runs around, she swims, she speaks sort of incessantly. And, everything the doctors told us was not true. So that's sort of an important lesson in that, too, I think.
Well, and I suspect that you had something to do with that.
Well, it's been a long haul, but she's an amazing kid with a great spirit. So she's, under the circumstances, she's doing really well. And what happened was it was probably 3 years I didn't paint. I couldn't paint, and I was so stressed out all the time. I mean, absolutely terrified all the time that I lost the use of my hands, actually. My ears, my shoulders were up around my ears from severe anxiety. And so I began to get shooting pains down my arms and couldn't feel my fingers and that kind of thing. So my husband just kept saying, you need to paint, and I just wouldn't. And then my daughter started having life-threatening seizures, and that kind of just pushed me over the edge. So at that point, I just started to paint. I actually couldn't hold a paintbrush. I had to wrap it in bubble wrap and then wrap it in duct tape because I couldn't close my hand at that point. So that was how I got back to painting again after 3 years with a bubble wrapped paintbrush.
Usually when you hear stories like this, where the doctors have said certain things will never occur, it's the tenacity of the parents who just are not willing to accept that. I'm assuming that you really pushed and went to experts and really tried to help your daughter in every way possible without giving up. It sounds like that. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, we've done tons of surgeries. We pretty much live at the hospital, and it's still the case, except that we've adjusted to it somewhat. And interestingly, she's a kid who has a really strong faith in God, and I think that really makes a difference for her and our whole family. And she's done a lot of it herself, but yeah, we've been sort of tireless warriors for her. And I used to think that getting back into painting was selfish and, like I said, frivolous and all this stuff, but I don't know what would happen to me if I hadn't. I was really going downhill fast, so I think going back to painting really saved my life. And
as we all know, all of us who paint, you can't pretty much think about anything else when you're painting.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, it's been about a decade where we haven't gotten much sleep. Luckily, her nighttime seizures have finally stopped. It was 8 years where she had seizures for the majority of the night, every night. So we just didn't really sleep. So that constant fatigue and the constant focus, it's been amazingly healing to focus on something else.
And you wouldn't change it now for anything, would you?
I wouldn't, no. I mean, she's taught me a lot about life and the value of life and just how people are different. I didn't understand my own prejudices, frankly, until I lived with someone who was really very disabled. I thought, I have a kid who's a different race, and therefore I don't notice differences, but I certainly did once it came to her abilities. So that was really eye-opening.
One of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because your story is so fascinating, and I think that the rest of us all whine a lot about our meager conditions, and when we put that in perspective, we have nothing to whine about. We all have our things, and I'm sure many of the people listening to this have equally as devastating things in their families or in their own lives, and so I don't want to diminish that, but I also think your story is very encouraging for those of us who are finding all these reasons not to paint, all the reasons that we don't have time, or we have too much stress in our lives, or we have other what we might refer to as problems that don't seem like problems at all.
Well, I think that's true, and I mean, everyone's problems seem huge in the moment, and spending a ton of time in children's hospitals, I realize that even ours kind of pales in comparison to some people's. But if anyone listening is going through something really hard, I would just encourage you to just paint, because it was the best thing I could have done, and I spent years suffering more than I really needed to, I think, because I was trying to be a martyr. So I think it's just incredibly healing.
Well, that's great. So tell us a little bit about your art now. What are you doing now? Tell us a little bit about your art career. How are you managing your career and your family?
Well, that's always tricky, I think, for any parent. But as far as my art goes, I think that the PleinAir thing really helped. Well, first of all, I did it out of a necessity. After I got back to painting, I thought, well, I can do this between doctor's visits. So that's how I kind of got into it. And it really changed the way that I see and the way that I paint. And as I said, I swung from illustration to these huge textural, really minimalist pieces. And I think now I've settled somewhere in the middle. So my work now has a narrative to it, but it leaves a lot to the imagination, and it's hugely influenced by my plein air work.
So who would you say are the artists, living artists and deceased artists, who have most influenced your work today?
Well, I don't know about influence, but the people that inspire me, artists who can say a lot in a minimal way, with a powerful emotional punch. And the people that come to mind are people like Brent Cotton, Hermione Youngquist, Doug Fryer. I could spend hours looking at their work. And as far as masters, Constable, Turner, and Innes are the ones that absolutely inspire me. They have a really strong sense of spirituality in their work and kind of a luminosity, especially with Turner. He's my absolute favorite.
And does that play a really important role in your own painting?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I look at a ton of art. I watch a lot of videos, and I just surround myself by art all the time. But as far as the spirituality piece, it absolutely does. After everything I've been through, I really want to help people find a restful place. And so I struggle to kind of create a sense of peace in my paintings. And I get that feedback all the time, which makes me really happy. So that's... Yeah, if that's what you were asking, and yes, it does play an important role.
And talk about the minimalism for those who might not understand what you're trying to accomplish and how perhaps you accomplish it.
Sure. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out really what my concept is when I begin a painting. What am I trying to say with it? And often it's a mood. Often it's that I'm trying to create just a sort of a sense of serenity. So I don't think I need a ton of detail for that. In fact, I think sometimes a detail can take away from it. So I often just use value and color to try and achieve that, but I suggest shapes and bushes and things in the background, but I don't like to go overboard with leaves and things like that.
You're laying low on detail.
Yeah, that's a more succinct way of putting it, yeah.
big shapes and not much detail, sounds like.
Yep, pretty much.
Well,
yep.
I find your work fascinating, and I had that exact experience when viewing your work, is that there is a sense of peace about it. There's something, I don't know if I picked up on the spiritual qualities of it or not, perhaps, but I certainly sensed that it was peaceful, and yet it drew me in. It made me want to be in that place.
Oh, well, thank you. Then I'm doing my job, because that's my greatest hope for it. So that makes me really happy.
So you are you're managing your family and your daughter, but you're now painting professionally again. You're selling your work. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that.
Oh, it's been great. I mean, like I said, I was so focused on all the problems for so long. I think that my girls are happy to see me focusing on my career. It's difficult to juggle, like it is for most parents, I think, but I figure it out. I end up painting at 2 a.m. quite a lot, and I just paint whenever I can, and I paint when they're in school.
It's kind of dark out there at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it's one of those nocturnes. No, it's I just get it, do it whenever I can. So it's been great. It really gives me something else to focus on, and I look forward to doing it for the rest of my life. It's all I ever wanted to do, so I feel blessed every day that I get to paint.
And I don't want to slight your other daughter. What's her name and what's her story?
Oh, she's 15. Yeah, and she's just wonderful. She's a big supporter of her little sister. So no slight at all. But,
well, one thing that I wanted to also touch on is that you have become quite the phenomenon when it comes to social media, especially Facebook and maybe others. You have a huge following. What's it up to today?
Facebook, 125,000 something, and on Instagram, I just started on Instagram, but it's over 2,300 now. Which is actually interesting. Instagram's actually doing better than Facebook comparatively. It's just that I'm brand new to Instagram, so.
Well, people are dying to know, and I know, and I know you want to be really cautious about this because you don't want to become known as the Facebook lady or the social media lady. And I also know that your painting is more important to you. But let's start out with why. Why did you pursue with vigor Facebook like you did, and then of course how? Now you and I have
sure.
You were kind enough to spend time with me and give me some coaching and give me some ideas a few months ago. But let's give people a couple of things that they can walk away with that might be helpful to them.
Absolutely, I'm happy to do that. Well, first of all, I will say that I didn't originally pursue it with vigor. Like most people, I sort of stumbled into it, and in 2009, I got onto Facebook, and I didn't really know what I was doing for a few years. And it had been 3 years or so, and I'd set up a page, and I'd gotten up to 500 fans, I think, something like that. And I sort of sat down and thought, well, this is kind of a time waster. I either need to figure out how to do it properly, or I should just shut it down because I don't have time to do this for fun, right? So at that point, I really just started analyzing it, and I did a little bit of advertising in the beginning. That's what everyone wants to know, but yeah, I did. I've spent over a period of several months, I think about $300, and I got my numbers up from 500 fans up to 2,000. And I was watching it carefully the entire time, learning and trying to understand exactly what was happening. And at that point, which was 3 years ago, I stopped completely, and it's grown organically in the last 3 years from 2,000 to 125,000. So I guess my point is to people that, for the first 3 years it grew by 500, and then in the second 3 years it grew by 123,000. So that's sort of the difference between knowing what you're doing and, sort of just playing around with it. So that's the first thing I wanted to share, just how incredibly important it is to understand it if you want to do it seriously. So,
well, let's before you get into the specifics, let's ask about the why. You decided you were spending time on it and you weren't being productive with it. Why is it important for you to have 125,000 followers?
Well, I wouldn't have known until it happened. It's just, it's like any kind of exposure. It's a good thing. Well, not every kind maybe, but most kinds of exposure are a good thing. And it's brought a ton of good stuff my way. Like you said, a lot of people know who I am. I got a lot of galleries contacting me, a lot of shows, just a ton of opportunities. And obviously, it helps with sales and that kind of stuff too, but that wasn't my primary focus. It just kind of took off, and it's been really great. I would highly recommend to people to try and get their numbers up.
So you've obviously spent 22 hours a day working on Facebook.
The funny thing about it is I actually don't even have Facebook on my phone. I refuse to be ruled by social media, so I actually spend less than half an hour a day on all social media things combined. So I just sort of have it down now. It's in maintenance mode, I guess you could say. So I'm just looking at my notes. I came up with kind of an acronym that I think might help people.
Okay.
That kind of explains. As I just recently began on Instagram, I really paid close attention to exactly what I did, what the process was, which is very, very similar to how I did it on Facebook. And I wrote it down. So the acronym that I have for you guys is WHAT. And starting at the beginning, the first W is why. First of all, you need to really get what is the point? What would you gain from it? Because there's really no point in doing it unless you know exactly what it is you want. Whether that's gallery exposure or more sales or more students or whatever it is. But it's important to know. And then that W could also stand for which, because it's my belief that it's better to do one platform really, really well than to do 5 of them that aren't really serving you and they're just kind of sucking your time. So that's the W. Did that kind of make sense?
Yep.
I'm going to read my notes.
Yep,
okay,
sense.
Then we move to the H, and that's your how, and that's the research piece. So, 3 months ago when I started on Instagram, I actually asked my teenager, what is Instagram? Because it was completely foreign to me. I had no idea how it worked or anything. So what I did, and this is the way I tend to approach things, I just sat down for a few hours and researched it, starting really simple, like what is Instagram, and read articles. And as I got more and more comfortable, got into more and more complex searches, like how do you tag posts, how do you grow a business on Instagram. I just kept doing that for a few hours, reading posts, taking notes, until I felt like I had a pretty good handle on it. So that's the how.
Right.
And then the A, so we have our why, we have our how, and then, let's see, and then A is an action plan. So now is the time where you sort of think about exactly how you're going to approach this. How do you want to brand yourself? And this would have a lot to do with your why in the beginning. If you know why you're doing it, you would sort of have a better idea for your action plan, depending on what your goal is. But so you'd formulate your plan, you'd think about your timing, when do you want to post, how often do you want to post, look at what a lot of other people are doing, and just you jot down your plan. And obviously at this point you don't really have enough information to know exactly what you should be doing. So that brings us to the T, which is tweak. So your what, your why, your how, your action plan. Now you're going to experiment, you're going to observe, analyze, and tweak. And on Facebook, And I should clarify that when we're talking about Facebook, I'm not talking about a Facebook profile, which is what everyone gets when they sign up for Facebook. We're talking about a Facebook business page, which I hope everyone listening will set up, because it really is so much more effective. And if you do business stuff through your profile, it's against Facebook's rules for one thing, and it just, that seems really stressful to me. But it also maxes out at 5,000 people, so you put all this energy into something that doesn't really help long term.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I've been battling is I'm maxed out at 5,000, and I have probably, I don't know, a couple thousand additional people who are following that, but
Right.
I've never switched it over to a business page because I really like interacting and I really like seeing what other people are posting. So what's the upside and what's the downside?
Well, they're just two completely different animals. I mean, the personal profile is supposed to be just, like it sounds personal, where you're interacting with people, generally friends you know or have met. And the business page, I still try and interact with a lot of the people, but it's just a much larger scale. And I use mine together. I put, pretty much pictures of my paintings on my business page, and then I put pictures of myself painting with my friends and at art openings and things like that on my profile. So they sort of go hand in hand a little bit. But that said, out of my, I think, 125,000, I think only 500 of those are actual Facebook friends of mine. So I wouldn't rely completely on your friends to fill out your page. That's going to come from other areas, and that's sort of how you'll get the exposure.
So you gave us some good strategy with your acronym, but I think people are itching. They're still looking at this and they're saying, "How did you pull that off?" So
right.
You obviously paid $300 over the course of a couple of months, and you did some Facebook advertising. What did you put in that advertising?
Oh, gosh, it was 3 years ago, so I'm trying to remember. Like everything I do, I just sort of researched it, and I'm thinking now it's probably changed. But if I remember correctly, I said something like check out my work at Jane Hunt Art. It was something pretty simple, using an action word, check out, or action phrase, directing people to something. It was pretty basic with a couple of different photographs of my work. That to me, that 2,000 or 1,500, I guess, was a drop in the bucket compared to the next 123,000, and it now grows by 2,000 a week. So I'm thinking that probably they're more interested in what I do now, and I can certainly shed some light on that. But,
okay, well, let's do that. You're growing like an amoeba. You're doubling in size very rapidly, probably every year. What are some of the techniques and tools that you use? Are you using any scheduling software?
No, I don't do anything like that. It's all manual. The big thing I would say is this, and I know people don't like to hear this, but social media is like anything else. It's like painting. You absolutely have to understand the basics before you can understand how to use it effectively. I mean, you can't just pick up a brush and get into all this nuanced stuff right away. You have to really have the basics down first. And so the good news is this is a heck of a lot easier to learn than painting. So I would, I would say in a few hours you could really understand this. And I get people get overwhelmed by it and they don't want to do it. But once you understand the basics, then the tips and tools people give you, you'll be able to employ really well. But there's no magic formula for sure.
I did a and you probably know this. I did a DVD with Laurie McNee, who has about 300,000 followers on Twitter, and we did a DVD which is about 5 hours of tips and techniques and tactics and tricks that one can employ to build one's social media. So that's one way, but let's hear about how you do it.
Sure. And Laurie's a good friend, actually, and she is the queen of Twitter, and we actually talk quite a bit about this stuff because we just shoot ideas back and forth. So that's one thing I would recommend. Get a good friend who's good at this stuff, not me, please, anyone else, and shoot ideas back and forth. And it's kind of interesting. You'll both grow that way. But so first of all, learn the basics. It's absolutely imperative. Spend some time like I did and just find, Google what is Facebook. I really understand what it is and what other people are doing. But then the biggest tip that I have by far is to go easy on the links. What I've noticed most people do is most people want to send everybody over to their website. And that makes sense. I do too. But the thing is, Facebook is a company and they make money off of advertising. And, they've created this amazing free service for people. But yeah, they make money off advertising, and that's fair enough. So if you're constantly sending people away from Facebook, that's not really going to help you. So I would just say the biggest tip that I have is keep people on your page, create a community, put good content out there, engage with your fans, reply to their comments, try and put posts that engage them, maybe ask them questions. But, as far as the links go, if I put a post with a link, it's going to get about 10% of the engagement that a post with a link would get, which is a huge, huge deal because engagement is what's going to make your page grow. So if you consistently keep putting links and your page isn't growing, that's most likely why. So that is the number one tip I have. And
my understanding is that where they will penalize you for sending people out, they will reward you for sending people deeper within. So if you're putting someone to a link, put them to a link, for instance, to something else in Facebook, especially if it's, if you want to post something that would be on your website, post it on a Facebook page as well, and then they can always get through to it on that. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, more or less. I mean, I wouldn't say that you're rewarded for doing that, but you definitely, I definitely don't think you'd notice a massive decrease in interaction. If you want to mention a gallery, for example, link to their gallery page on Facebook, not to their website. My theory on it is that when you get your numbers big enough, you're going to have tons of people going over to your website. I don't think you need to constantly keep putting the link in over and over and over again. I think that eventually they'll come when it gets big enough. And so if you get your post seen by a lot less people and it stops your page from growing, you're going to stop all that organic growth and all that organic traffic that would have happened.
Okay, excellent. Any other tips?
Yeah, I have a few. I'm just reading through here. So the links is a big one. Engage your audience. Most people have probably read this, but I would stick to images with very short descriptions. Under 8 words is ideal. Try and come up with something engaging. Like if you can't ask a question, that's good. Really, the most helpful thing on Facebook would be to familiarize yourself with your analytics. And on Facebook pages, that is insights. And it's incredibly helpful. You can see when your fans are online, what they're looking at, what they're interested in. And on Instagram, that would be Iconosquare, and I cannot say enough about Iconosquare. It's an amazing tool.
What is Iconosquare?
It's a free tool. Well, there's a paid and a free version, but the free version is fine. It's a tool so you can use Instagram on your laptop, which I appreciate because I cannot see the little buttons on my phone these days, so I prefer to do everything on my laptop. And it just makes it so much easier, so much faster, and then they have full analytics too. So you can see what times of day are best to post, and just a ton of information. So I would definitely get an Iconosquare account if you're going to do Instagram.
Well, this has been really remarkable. Tell me what, for you, what PleinAir painting does for you versus when you were just painting in the studio.
Sure. Well, it just really helps me see a lot more clearly. As obviously the light's a lot better and a lot more real outside than trying to work in the studio. The colors are more accurate. It's just an amazing experience to be out there painting, to be in the scene you're painting, basically. So it's been a life-changing experience for me, and I will do it for as long as I possibly can.
Well, and it's really interesting because you're younger. There are, the demographics are really interesting as well, and there are a lot of younger people who are getting into plein air painting, but there are also a lot of people who kind of get to that stage of their life where they're sick of working and they still have to continue in their careers, but they're painting on the side so that they can exercise their creative side, and then there are a lot of retired people in, and it's kind of like the new golf, if you will. And
it really is.
What I love about it is that you make a lot of new friends. It's social. You get to go painting with people. I can pick up the phone or email somebody pretty much anywhere in the United States if I'm going to be there and say, hey, let's go painting. And usually I can find somebody to go painting with because I like to paint by myself, but I'd rather paint with other people. And so I like the social aspects of it, and I like the creative aspect. And, of course, I like the fact that I can sell a painting from time to time, and that's
yeah,
nice.
No kidding.
Yeah, but not everybody's into that. I don't sell my studies anymore because I wrote an editorial about this just the other day, and I love the idea that I can go into my studio where they're all kind of pinned up all around the walls, hundreds of them, and to be able to look at them and remember, hey, I was in that spot and I painted with Don Demers, or I was in that spot and I painted with Matt Smith, that kind of a thing. And it's just a nice memory for me. So I don't sell the studies. I take the studies and I make studio paintings from them usually. I have sold them in the past, but I'm trying more to hang on to them.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I sort of do both. I keep them until I'm done with the studio piece, and then I generally let them go. But I like the fact that you have this sort of visual diary for your last few years. It's great.
Yeah, I do too. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite things to do is when I go to museums, I look for the plein air studies because they're so real. They're so much different than the studio pieces. They
my gosh.
seem to capture things so much more beautifully. So
it's true. I got to see Turner's sketchbooks this summer at the Tate, and it was unbelievable experience. Unfortunately, I was there with the whole family, who in 10 minutes they were over it, and I wanted to stare at them for hours. But it was truly unbelievable.
So for people who are kind of trying to shortcut things or break through, learn to paint, what advice do you have for them?
Well, I would say, as we've touched upon, the first thing really is just push through the fear. Just do it and keep doing it. I would say as far as plein air painting specifically, or either really, just get a good teacher. If you can't go to art school, I don't think that's necessary anymore. Just find a teacher who can really teach you the basics. Somebody who you admire but that also teaches very well. And then probably after that, join a local plein air group so you can go out frequently, but just paint and paint and paint. Get the first couple of hundred behind you, and then most likely you're going to be in good shape at that point.
Yeah, and I think everybody needs to understand that it's okay to suck.
Yeah, that's very true. We've all sucked, and the thing is, you can drag that first 100 out for a decade, or you can do it in a few months. It just sort of depends on your level of drive, but you will get there if you just keep doing it. And make sure, though, you're surrounding yourself with good people who you trust their opinion and you respect their painting. And those are the people, if you're asking for advice, those are the people you want to listen to.
So who would you like to study under that you have not yet studied under?
Oh, so many people. Two of the people that will be at the convention, actually, Catherine Statz and Matt Smith, are on my short list for people that I just admire so much and I would love to study with. Brent Cotton I would love to study with because he's one of the few palette knife painters that I know of that's very, very successful, and that is mostly what I do also. So I'm fascinated. I don't think he teaches, but
Michelle Byrne has become a palette knife painter now. And C.W. Mundy is almost not only, he's barely even using palette knife anymore. Anything he can find in the kitchen to slap the paint around and move it around,
He is wonderful. Yeah, I love his work too. No, there's just so many, and I think it's going to be incredible to see so many of them together at the convention. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, and you're going to be teaching at the convention, yes?
Correct. I'm going to be doing a demo.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to, actually, speaking of Facebook, I put out like a little poll, and it turns out that most people are pretty stumped by water, and I'm kind of known for my bucolic scenes, meadows and things like that. So I'm going to do sort of a farm, meadow farmy kind of scene with a stream, I'm thinking.
Okay.
And, I love to teach, and I teach all levels, so it's really fun to kind of go step by step through the process. And I've been told that I can actually paint and explain fairly well at the same time, so we'll see how that goes.
So you can talk and chew gum. That's good. We this year, I don't want to make this all about the convention. This year we're launching some specialty mastering sessions. We do have a session on painting water, and we have another one on painting trees, and another one on painting clouds, because it kind of ties into that concept of chunk learning, where you just focus on one thing and you really get good at that one thing, and then you can be additive. Then now all of a sudden you're gonna do that. My big thing right now is eyeballs. I'm trying to chunk learn eyeballs, and so I'm copying and copying and copying eyeballs because I want to get better at painting.
Perfect.
Eyes.
Yeah, that's the way. That's exactly it, I think. Yeah, that's great.
Well, so cool, and thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing what could be a very sensitive story, and I think you're very inspiring to many of us who, first off, we have nothing to complain about, but also, you have figured out that it's good for your soul, it's good for your stress, it's good for your heart, that you are actually finding time for yourself to paint, and for those of us who probably are not taking the time that we have, I think you're a real inspiration. I know I'm going to go right from here out to the studio and finish a couple paintings that I started in Cuba.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. I can't wait to see those, so hopefully you'll post them.
Well, we're going to do several of us are participating in a museum show that'll be, or a gallery show that's coming up, so there will be a chance, I'm sure.
Good. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for the conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, we're glad to have you, and I'm looking forward to spending time with you at the convention.
Likewise. Take care.
Well, that was a wonderful interview, and I appreciate Jane being so open about her life. I'm thinking that Jane, since she has 120,000 followers and that we only have 12,500 listeners so far, that maybe Jane will put it out there to her 120,000 followers and we can get our listening levels up to 120,000. There's a challenge for you. Pressure's on, Jane. Well, this interview was sponsored by easelbrushclip.com. It has become an invaluable tool on my PleinAir and my studio easel. My brushes are right in view, easy to grab, and no more knocking them on the ground in my paint. Watch the video, www.easelbrushclip.com. Podcast episode number 9 brought to you by the PleinAir Salon with up to $21,000 in cash prizes. The big grand prize will be awarded at the convention, so enter your very best paintings for the year. They don't actually have to be from this year. Your 5 best paintings or more, if you wish, before March 15th. That's coming right up. March 15th is the deadline right around the corner, so get it done now. Just hang up and do this right now. Well, finish the podcast first. www.pleinairsalon.com. Also brought to you by the PleinAir Convention, the world's largest gathering of outdoor artists. It's been called the Woodstock of Art, and it's the Super Bowl of Art. It's coming up this April in Tucson, Arizona. There are 60, count them, 60 faculty members teaching in oil, watercolor, pastel, even urban sketching. And legends. This list is huge. And I want to ask you to indulge me because it's so huge. Here's the list. Alan Flatman, Albert Handel, Aline Ordman, Amory Bowling, Andy Evanson, or it's Evenson, I think. I'm sorry, Andy. Me, Bill Anton. I'll be teaching, by the way, Art Marketing Boot Camp. Bill Anton, Bill Davidson, Brian Mark Taylor, Brienne Brown, Bruce Gomez, Camille Praswadik, Carol Sweeney, Cindy Barron, Kurt Walters, Grand Canyon guy, Dario Falzon, Dave Santilles. I always get that wrong, Dave. I'm so sorry. Santillini's. I don't know. What is it? Dean Mitchell, Eric Koppel, Francesco Fontana, Frank Eber, George Gallo, movie director that did Local Color. Fantastic painter. He's going to be on stage opening night. George Strickland, Georgia Mansour from Australia, Glenn Knowles, Howard Friedland, J. Brad Holt, James McGrew, James Willis, Jane Hunt, John Stern, Jill Stefani Wagner, Jim Woodark, Joanna Arnett, Joe Gerziak, John Budison, wow, Jev Wang, Karen Ann Hitt, Catherine Statz, Kathy Anderson, Kim Lordier, Christy Grissendorf, Lee Milter, that's my secret weapon. You'll hear more about her soon. Leon Holmes, Linda Tibbetts, Laurie McNee, Laurie Putnam, Steve Doherty, our editor, grand editor, Mark Feldman, Matt Smith, Matt Sturbence, Nancy King Mertz. Nancy came with us to Cuba. What a painter. Paul Cratter, Chong Hang, R. Gregory Summers, Rachel Warner, Randall Sexton, Richard Lindenberg, Richard Sneary, Rosemary Thompson of Rosemary Brushes, Stefan Bauman from the PBS show The Grand View, Stephanie Birdsall, Susan Blackwood, Susie Heyer, Terry Ford, Tim Oliver, Tom Christopher, Tom Lynch, Yerlik Gleiter, Vladislav Yeleziv, I always have trouble with that one, I don't know if I have it right, and William A. Schneider. So quite a lineup. We hope that you'll join us. You can learn more at PleinAirConvention.com. Well, the plein air movement is hot, which is why so many people are gravitating to Plein Air Magazine. Thank you. Thank you very much for doing that. It's available at Barnes & Noble newsstand nationwide and other newsstands around the country. #1 art magazine, representational art magazine at Barnes & Noble. So pick one up and or get a bi-monthly subscription for about half the price of the newsstand at PleinAirMagazine.com. Well, this has been fun. Let's do it again sometime, like next week. And I will see you then. Remember, March 15th is the deadline, the last deadline for the year to enter the Plein Air Salon, PleinAirSalon.com. We'll see you next time. I'm Eric Rhodes, publisher and founder of Plein Air Magazine. And remember, it's a big world out there. Go paint it. We'll see you. Bye-bye.